Did you look up how to spell hypocrisy? I think you did a good job. I think you got it.
I think so.
I would have no idea. Thanks for watching. One more time.
And the boys, I went in the other room, they were having a prayer meeting for the girls in the youth group that they would get their hearts right and have a good attitude. And I don't know, I was
a
a
real
youth
man,
pastor
though.
for like 8 or 9 years, and I'm like, this is awesome.
Welcome to the Youth Leader's Brain. We have another episode here that is a broad topic where it could take us hours and hours if we chose to. My name is Sam Brock from out here at Ironwood Camp, and this is...
I'm Will Cover. I'm now the pastor of Arise Baptist Church in Houston, Texas, but had some years of experience as a youth pastor, and so excited to be able to talk about it.
Tell me about that. You started at what age as a youth pastor?
I was 26 years old.
Okay, 26 years old, and kids in the home
and
were...
2 little babies.
Okay,
So-
and we're on junior high, so did you have junior hires in that first youth group?
Yes, I
Okay.
did.
Yeah,
Although predominantly it was seniors, but then
Really?
we just started growing it up through there. So those seniors kind of graduated out, and then it was almost completely junior high for a
Yeah,
while.
it seems like it does that every now and then. Like, whoa, this is a junior high group, and then it changes as time goes on. I youth pastored for 9 years, and then 3 years later on. My first 9 years, I didn't have my kids in the home were not in junior high, and I didn't have too much junior high experience other than like being a counselor or something like that. And then my last 3 years, all my kids had gone through junior high, and so it was interesting to have a perspective. And I know your oldest is now in junior high.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like there are junior hires that you minister to as a youth pastor, and then there are junior hires that are actually in your home,
Yeah.
and you're trying to figure out how to minister to them. So I'm kind of curious. Like, okay, so I gave you the topic a day or two ago.
Yes.
And he's here for our Youth Winter Rendezvous, speaking to 7th through 12th graders, and as our speaker here this weekend. But when you heard the topic, top 10 working with junior hires, how did you make your list? How did you kind of...
Well, I got excited about it because I love junior high. Like, it's a great age. It's so fun. They're so fresh. They're coming into the youth group. Everything's brand new. And so you got a lot of fun things to work with. And so, but I immediately thought, I really need to talk with the expert, my current
Your current
junior hire.
Your live-in junior
Yes.
hire.
So he's in 8th grade this year. And in fact, next year we'll have another one moving into junior high who's in 6th grade right now. So we'll go into
yeah.
7th next year. So I feel like we're living that out right now. So I wrote down some of my list, and then I said, come over here, son. I want you to look and see what you think about this. And then he added some more.
Right.
And then on the plane coming over here today, as he was busy reading a book or doing what he was doing, I went back through the list and said, some of his are pretty good. And so I kind of refined it, and we put this together. So here we are.
And we rode from the airport from Vegas here for 2 hours with
Yep.
your junior hire. And it reinforced some of my thoughts here that I'm like, I remember that it has not changed. So junior hires from the 80s, 90s, 0s, 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever. I think it's a different culture, a different time.
Sure.
But junior high is just a unique season of life. So here we go. Top 10 working with junior high. And I'll start us off with just a real simple thought that was really helpful for me in the early days to kind of deal with. Every now and then, junior hires can get on your nerves. Usually when I'm tired or when it just seems like they just don't get it. Number 10 for me is love their future. And I just really found that, you look around at everybody in this world who are leaders now, everybody who's in your church, at some point, they were a junior hire.
I was.
Right. I was a junior hire. And so I just had to come to the conclusion that these junior hires, no matter how they're acting or how immature or what they're saying right now, they are going to have a future. And I need to love that future. I don't know what it's going to be. But I now look at junior hires from 20, 30 years ago, and I'm like, wow. God has done some amazing things in their life. So number 10 for me, love their future.
I really like that one. And I think, you love them where they're at, of course.
Yep.
But then you say, I know this is going to change. They're going to grow. And so it's a great time in their life.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
So I guess I get to go?
Yeah, you've got
All right,
10 now.
here's my number 10. Be excited even if they are not. When they're coming into junior high, sometimes there's a lot of excitement, but sometimes there's a lot of fear when they're coming into it. And so I've just seen some coming in acting really reserved, not sure about what to do, or they get to an activity and they say, well, this is dumb. This isn't what I like to do.
Right.
And often that comes into something they're not good at already. Because they come in from upper elementary school, maybe they're good at sports or academics or a certain thing or another, but then they have areas that now they're being exposed to all this new stuff. And so they tend to pull back. And so I just think as a youth pastor especially, you want to be excited about what's going on, even if they're not, and realize the reason they're not excited is not because you're not necessarily doing a good job.
Yeah.
It's just because it's new and they're struggling with the emotions and feelings with all of that.
This one's an interesting one too, because be excited even if they are not. They do blurt out whatever is right there, and they're just going to tell you what they think. And here, this is like one where you need to set the tone.
Yeah.
Like you can't afford to have a seventh grader say, "Oh, that's dumb,"
Yeah.
and you're like,
Shuts you down.
No, yeah, maybe this is. Oh, what am I going to do? No, you've got to be like, no, it isn't. This is, and just.
And this is probably for me, like if you're a new youth pastor, these are the kind of things, if you're not feeling super confident yourself, you can come in and all of a sudden go, well, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. And you probably don't, because I know I didn't. But you can still be excited and encourage them and, like you said, set the tone for it.
Yeah, and I do think that, I mean, you're being excited, so there's an emotion you're throwing out there, and so those emotions are contagious, and so they'll catch on eventually to where you're at.
And eventually what
I like
I've
that
seen
one.
too is you get excited, and pretty soon the junior high becomes that age that they just want to be with you and do whatever's going on.
Well, then the same blurt where they're like, "This is the best game ever,"
and they start pushing then the senior high, who goes, we've played this for years, and they go, oh, it's brand new again.
Yep. That's a good one. Okay, for me, number 9, variety in order to highlight strengths. Now, let me explain what I'm saying here. Junior age, they'll do anything. They'll try anything. And by the time you get to an adult, you kind of like, no, I'm good at this. I'm not good at that. Do not put me in that situation. But here in junior high, sometimes they move to that adult realm where they're like, no, I don't want to do anything. And partly because there's a lot of things changing and everything is happening. Suddenly my foot's way bigger than it used to be. And I don't want to try some things because they're kind of getting some of the failures are happening. But I really think the reason you give them variety is so that they can figure out what they're good at.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't think junior hires know what they're good at until they keep on practicing it and trying it and giving them that variety. So I have it in my mind, even though they don't like it, I'm going to give them variety and I'm looking for their strengths.
So one of the things I did when I was a youth pastor, I also was a coach of a swim team. And one of my philosophies as a coach on the team was to, especially those younger age children, to teach them all the different strokes. Even though we look at one swimmer and we say, this guy's definitely going to be good at freestyle backstroke, this one's going to be better at butterfly or another stroke. And I would just teach them all. And it was amazing how some found strengths that they didn't know they had before.
Yeah.
And then others, in time, they stopped really focusing on that, and that was okay. I like how my dad always says it to me. He said, those early teenage years and sometimes even stretching into high school is a time period in your life where you're trying to decide, do I still want to be a kid or an adult? And you jump back and forth between those
really
two things.
Yep.
And some days you're one and the other, and sometimes it's minute by minute. And so I think this is a great one for just encouraging and bringing out those things and giving them some opportunities they might not have otherwise.
I do believe that in the junior high years, the weaknesses are really obvious, and they're the things that are often like being talked about. And so I need to find it's like the glimmer of a strength. I think, maybe if you really practice, you could get good at this because it is still their first time. They're not good at it. But if there's just the glimmer of a strength, I want to be like, no, let's keep working at that. At the same time, I played the piano for 3 years and I was never good at the piano. And junior high is also the time where you're like, no,
This is
Not
good too because it helps to bring out different things in different kids in your youth group. Because you'll
Yes.
have some that come in and they're the show off, they're the big personality, and then you might have the quiet one in the corner. But that quiet one in the corner may have some great strengths that if you only do, say, we always play basketball,
Right.
You're not letting those other ones have
Yeah.
the opportunities to shine.
Yeah, so mind and body and creativity and art and school and math and you're just all over the
I
place.
can give you a good example about this. In my first youth group, I started in and I was a sports guy, played all the sports growing up. So every activity I wanted to have some sort of sports component to it. And I noticed, especially some of the younger ones, just really hanging back. And it took me a little while because I was new at this, but I learned pretty quickly they were more of an arts and crafts kind of group. And so one activity that we did that they just loved, I took a roll of like butcher paper and rolled it out on the floor and cut it up into sections. And it was a Christmas party. And I said, each section, I want you to draw out a session or an event from the life of Jesus. And they sat there for an hour and colored pictures at a youth activity. And I thought, this is crazy, but they loved it.
I'm writing that
and
one
then
down.
We had
That's a good one.
Yes, it worked great, but it was about finding strengths in different ones.
Exactly. Like even in your activity line, it's variety.
Yeah.
Even in just all the little details.
In the
So-
way you teach, I mean,
Yep.
everything. But
Okay,
that's
you're number
good.
9.
Well, this kind of goes along with that
Oh.
one. New places and experiences.
Yeah.
So you have a great opportunity as a youth pastor to be able to take them to places, maybe on an activity that they've never experienced before, seeing them in situations that are new for them, and just kind of generally bringing them out and helping them grow. So it does relate a lot to what you just said there.
And that's really good because sometimes I'm wanting that activity to be bigger and better. It's this weight of like, oh, it's got to be
Yeah.
better. But no, we're just going to go to this little spot that's just a historical marker and go hike to the top of that mountain and back. Or you know what I mean? It's not. It's just something new, and we learn something. Suddenly, I think young people realize, no, that was fun.
Yeah.
Like it. I didn't have to have. I didn't have to have a toy or like. Yeah. We're
So,
on
yeah,
the same
and we
page right
didn't
there.
talk about these
We
ahead
didn't.
of time, and we didn't even talk about the order or anything. But yeah, that
We worked hard at
so.
not telling each other our list while we were traveling back. So here's my number 8. Teach them to live like adults in their home. So I think in the curriculum that you are now teaching junior hires, this is the time where you teach them how to be husband and wife in terms of this is how you live with somebody long term. This is how you are part of the body that is the church. So you are teaching them to be adults. That's the bar that you set. And I think too often we let the junior hire work from the bar that is 4th grade, 5th grade.
Yeah.
When I want the junior hire to say, no, you're about to be an adult, because by the time they are an adult, these are the things that people are like, you should have learned this in junior high.
Yeah.
Why are you acting like a kid? Junior high is the time where you learn how to be an adult.
I remember teaching one junior high boy how to shake hands.
Yeah.
Because the first time he came into youth group and we shook hands, he just kind of gave me this limp hand thing, and I said, hey, bud, come here. Let me show you.
Yeah.
This is how, and I didn't hurt him or anything, but I just showed him how to give a nice, firm
right.
handshake. And he goes, oh, that helped. And all of a sudden, it changed his standing in the whole church at the
Yeah.
handshaking time, because he could go around and give people a firm handshake. And he became leveled up in that sense of manhood just with a
And in
simple thing
junior
like
high,
that.
they want to know those things. Like if you tell them as a senior, it's almost like you should have already known this. Sorry, it's like, but in junior high, it's oh, okay.
I really see in our society today, it's like that bar just keeps getting pushed out further and further.
So many excuses
Right.
for it to be way down.
Now graduating from high school, we don't really expect much of you. Whereas it used to be when I was growing up, kids in high school had jobs.
Yeah.
And now it's like, why would I have a job? I
just
play
thankful they're not
video
in
games.
jail.
I make YouTube videos, and here we are on one of those, right? So clearly,
We've not grown up.
maybe I shouldn't have used that example. I don't know. But, and people saying, when are these kids going to grow up? And maybe it's because we could do a better job
Yep.
of encouraging
Setting the bar.
them to do that early
Yep.
on.
Okay, number
good.
8 for you.
All right. Well, this is very simple.
Okay.
Lots of food and soda. Or pop, or as we say in Texas, Coke.
Coke.
Everything is
Everything's Coke.
Everything's Coke.
Uh,
So I just think kids love to eat and they love to have a good time. And And so it's okay to do that at this stage in life. I know somebody out there may be very health conscious, and this is a terrible one for
The
you.
sugar mafia.
That's why this is number 8, not number 1, okay? But I do think the kids enjoy that. And I found, in time, in experience as a youth pastor, you can tell how mature of a youth pastor you are as to how much pizza's left over at the end of the activity. So if you get to the place when you can calculate it
You can
down and
figure
only
it all
have
out.
1 or 2 pieces left, you have arrived as a
The
youth
problem
pastor.
is in junior higher, the junior higher goes from, no, I just want one.
Yeah. Then they,
No, that was one pizza.
yeah, they don't pizza.
They
And you
don't-
can't gauge it.
Right.
Sometimes they come, I'm not hungry. I don't like cheese.
You know what I would say about this one is that I know some of you are like, what do you mean lots of food and soda? But here, I'm going to step and go back
Yeah,
just
go
a little
ahead.
bit. I almost think it's like you have to teach them what a party looks like.
Yeah.
Like
How to have fun,
how
and
do
it's
they
okay.
have fun, and how do they celebrate, and what is a special occasion? Because this world, this is about lots of pleasure and substances that make you feel out of your your conscience, and so lots of food and soda. I've got to figure out how to teach a junior higher how to party.
Yeah.
Like there is a place for a party.
Well, it's sad people are not very good at having fun
Yeah.
in a wholesome way.
Yeah.
Because, we spend so much time in front of our screen. We're laughing at somebody else doing some prank to somebody else, but we don't know how to just interact and laugh and have
Yeah.
a good time
Yeah.
without sort of showing off
Yeah.
or doing something that's not good.
Yeah. So don't take that one out of context. I think it's really, I like it. I like it a lot. Here's my number 7. Junior hires listen. Now, here's what I've always said is that junior hires, no matter what they're doing or it seems like their attention is gone, they are tuned in to what adults are saying. They are noticing what adults are saying. Now, once they get into 9th through 12th grade, they can look at you. It looks like they're paying attention and their mind's in a totally different place. But junior hires are still really listening to what's going on. So I think that all of your words are important in junior hires. And I think some of the throwaway comments that we make or the frustrated comments that we make, we're like, no, that won't impact them. When I would venture to say some of the best or some of the times where they listen the most, where they're actually words that you're like, I'm never going to forget this, happen in junior high.
Yeah, I think so too. And often, like you said, they're listening to every word. So you may be over here talking to this one over here, but this one's paying attention as well.
And they're paying attention when you're talking to your wife. They're paying attention when you're talking to another man. It's like that in junior high. They start staying at the table just to listen to the adults talk. They're paying attention to everything.
We're living that world
Are
right
you
now
really?
where it's like, hey, buddy, why don't you go find something else to do? We need to talk. What do adults have to talk about that's so, is it bad stuff? Well, no, it's just things that,
you're
we're
not
not
ready
ready
to
to,
listen to.
talk about
Yep.
with us. So,
Yep.
yeah, but
Junior
I
hires
think they're
listen.
listening. They're growing. It's back to what we said earlier. They're trying to decide, am I going to be a kid or an adult?
Yep.
Sometimes they'll listen for a while and then they'll just go off and play little games on the
play.
floor with
With their younger cousins.
Matchbox cars or dolls, and then come right back.
Yep.
Oh, that's good. Well, this has already been proven, at least in our house and our life today, but I think they love schedules and maps. Junior hires love to know what's going on. And as a youth pastor, they were always full of questions. What's next? Where are we going? What are we doing? And so I think there's a lot of creative things that you can do as a youth leader to incorporate these types of things into your activities and events, and just having a clear communication with them up front of what's going on. Giving them, using maps and the activities, treasure hunts and all that stuff are really fun for junior high, scavenger hunts. We've done lots of those kinds of things, and schedules. So for me, some of the things I did were I had a seating chart or map for the bus, and I would mix it up to put them with other kids and mix up the groups and do some fun things with that. And if you do it the right way, it can be a lot of fun. If you do it the wrong way, everybody goes, this is dumb. I don't want to sit next to this person. They love to know what's coming next. So often I would put one of the junior high boys or girls who had a watch or a device with a clock on it in charge of the schedule. So I'd say, all right, you need to tell me when it's this time. And boy, they were on, they were to the second, Pastor Will, it's, 5:32 in 15 seconds, but that can help you and it'd be a lot of fun, and it makes them your helper. And they just love to be in the know and what's going on. It's part of that, learning and growing and trying to figure out life. And so helping them with these things helps them to put some order to things, because their brain is just,
Yeah.
it's going
Yeah.
100 miles an hour and it's jumping from one thing to the next. And so this helps to give them some structure.
I think this is helpful because sometimes we live by the seat of our pants.
It forces
and
us to have a
right? So we're like, we're just going to go as the Spirit leads.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons they like these things is because they want to be prepared for what's next.
Yeah.
They want to know what's going on. So, when I'm able to tell them, okay, we're getting in the car, the next time we stop is this time, that's like the schedule that helps them know.
So I actually used this as a sermon illustration a couple of weeks ago, talking about my childhood from when I was in this age bracket, of something my dad did with me. And I was talking about the importance of having a destination and then knowing how to get to that destination. So I used the illustration of a map. But one thing my dad did with me, actually, as a boy, is I would sit in the back and he had me holding the atlas. Yes, I'm that old. It was pre-GPS, right? And
That on paper?
yeah, exactly. I showed it to our church. Said, some of you don't even know what this is, and I
Where's
was
the
teaching
button?
them all these
Scroll.
things. But my job was to figure out how far it was to the next stop, and there would be the little mile indicators next to the roads. You'd have to add all those up, and then he'd have me figuring out the gas mileage and all kinds of stuff. And so it's just something I think that at that age you're really fascinated with, and you like to know
Yeah,
what's going
figuring
on,
out how it all
and
works.
figuring it out, understanding it. So
That's good.
I think there's a lot of fun
good.
things here.
Number 6 for me, teach them how to be a man or a woman. And this is recognizing, I believe in junior high, they are, in elementary school, the really good friend was the friend who had the best toy. And so now they're coming into the spot where I'm like, whoa, girls are different than me. I need to figure this out. And this is just a whole new area, a topic of conversation that has not been necessary in their minds. So how to be a man, how I should treat a lady, how what the manners are that deal with the roles in our life. So
I totally agree. I know I'm jumping in here with stories of things I did as a youth pastor, but another one that went over really well for us, and I don't know if I took this from an idea here at Youth Leaders or if just something along the way, but one year we were going to camp, and I think we were taking about 50 or 60 teens on the bus. And for us at the time where we lived, it was about a 10-hour ride to camp. So I knew this is a lot of bus time. And as a youth leader, sometimes you go, oh, bus time is terrible. But I remember hearing at an idea here saying, use that bus time and make it profitable and have a plan, have a schedule, have a seating, all those things. So on the teaching them to be a man, I decided to come up with man cards for all of our teenage boys. And so, people would talk about your man card.
yeah.
So on the front, it had a place for them to write their name, and it said, this is my man card. And on the back, in fine print, I had a description of what a man card was and, what was befitting of manhood. And it was holding in the door for the lady, not, just spouting off with whatever popped into your head. All kinds of good manly pursuits and that kind of thing. Not passing gas on the bus, stuff like that. And so then I carried a hole punch with me in my pocket. And anytime somebody did something that wasn't befitting of their manhood, they got a punch in their card. And we had a prize at the end of the week for the boy who came back with the most remaining man card. And I got a couple really fun questions from the junior hires. Because I had them all, junior high all the way through high school, carry the man card. The first question was this: Pastor Will, if we lose our whole man card, does that mean we're a woman? I said, no. It just proves you're still a little boy. And his eyes got really big. He goes, oh, he was real serious.
I'm going to keep my man card.
About this. And then the other good question that I got from another junior hire is, so why don't we have woman cards? If we have man cards, we're all about equality and everything.
These are good questions.
Why shouldn't there be woman cards?
I'm curious about
So
the
if you
answer.
ever do this man card idea, you need to be prepped.
Right.
You're gonna get
I'm
some
ready.
questions.
I'm listening.
So the question was, why don't we have woman cards? And so my answer was, well, often we see if the men will walk with God and be manly men, it will encourage the ladies to be what they need to be as well. And I said, I think if you boys do a good job and you're kind and considerate and helpful, we probably won't have too many issues with the girls. And it was really interesting because not long after that, we took a missions trip with some of those same teens, and we had a little issue arise with the girls. But the guys, they were doing a great job. And the boys all came to me and said, Pastor, we need to pray for the girls. They're really having a hard time. They were kind of having just a squabble in the youth group girls. And so I said, yeah. So I got a couple of youth leaders together. They were going to talk to the girls that were arguing. And the boys, I went in the other room. They were having a prayer meeting for the girls in the youth group that they would get their hearts right and have a good attitude. And I don't know, I was a real youth pastor for like 8 or 9 years. And I'm like, this is awesome. That's
I have men in my group.
Yep.
That's good.
The other thing, one final thing. So I had to have a prize, right, for whoever was the man.
Of course, because that's manly.
Right.
To have a prize.
You had to have something.
Have a trophy.
We had to have a trophy. So I spent a long time. What do you give as a trophy? And when you think manly trophy for a boy, you think, a lot of people think a knife or a gun, right? And I thought, I don't think we want to.
Remember, they're in junior high.
Right. And I thought, I don't want to give out a knife or a gun. It's just probably not going to work. So I was just going around. I ended up buying one of those green insulated thermoses, like your grandfather used to carry with soup in it, or coffee with the cup on top.
The hot shot. Yep.
And so I gave it out at the end of the week. One of the boys won it. And it was a great thing. He brought that thing to youth group every week for weeks and weeks and weeks. And he'd sit down front, unscrew the top, and sip it. It was probably just water in there. It was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
And that's now been probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Wow.
And I'll still hear from those boys sometimes about that one week when we had man card.
That is fun.
It was a lot of
That
fun.
is fun.
So teach them to be a man.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, go ahead. You're number
All
6.
right, number 6, include them. So anytime if you have a youth group of more than 2 or 3, you're going to have ones, especially junior hires, and this can go up into high school too, where they just don't seem to fit with everybody else.
Yep.
Like I had a group like this, a lot were really engaging, and then there was this one guy, it didn't matter what we did, as much variety as we tried, he just didn't seem to, and so it took a lot of work to include him. And I think this requires, first of all, compassion on your part. You've got to care and not just say, well, what's his problem, And sometimes they'll not even come to activities. I had that happening. Or they'll come and sit in the back, or come to church or Sunday school and sit in the back. And so just working to include them. This is going to take time. It's going to take care, love. You can't make fun of them. Some people think, well, I'll just tease them into, that may push them even further away. Find something that includes them. One particular example that I can use is, I had several like this along the way, but I had this little silly video, this little ancient comedy sketch on YouTube that I had enjoyed watching in times gone by, and I noticed this guy sitting over in the corner, and so I went over to him and said, hey, look at this, really funny, and I pulled out my phone, and he sat there, and then he kind of went, and that was about it. But then after that, we had a little moment to relate back to. And so I think trying to include them, find something that you can connect with them on, and it may take a lot of variety to find it, what they like, and they may not like anything anybody else does, and then keep working to try to bring them in, but it's so important.
And the key here is recognizing that person doesn't have to be your best friend.
No.
They just have to be part of your life. And, teaching your juniors and seniors, I know that they're weaker. I know that they're not, they're a little awkward.
Might even be weird.
Right, yeah, even. But that's okay. They're part of our group, and they just need to be, you just have to include them. It's like the youngest kid in the family. You've got to be okay with, the youngest kid in the family may impact what we can do on vacation.
Right.
But that's okay. They're
Right.
part of the family.
Yep.
Therefore,
They're part of the
make them
family.
part
We'll
of it.
just make them part, and enjoy spending time with them for who they are.
Yeah.
Going back to your first one, love their future.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, my number 5 is beware of the pecking order. Here's what I mean by this one. If any of you have had chickens or turkeys or anything along the way, however many you have, if you've got 12 of them, the number 12 chicken is in rough spot. And so when I say beware of the pecking order, what I'm really looking for is that one person who everybody else picks on. And that person, I think you have to protect that person. I think you have to help that person get through some hard times. I think if you don't, you really magnify some of the things that they're being picked on for. You know what I mean? So this is everything from something that is their fault to something that is not their fault. Obviously, if they're getting picked on because of something that they are doing, they need to try to work at changing that. But there are plenty of things that people pick on folks for that have nothing to do with whether or not, and they can't change it. And so I just, with a group working together, you very easily get this group kind of pick on, and it happens in your home. I mean, that much.
Well, I think one piece of that too is when maybe something funny happened, like say somebody tripped and fell in front of everybody. Well, it's okay for everybody to laugh. It was funny.
Yep.
But if that same thing keeps getting brought up again and again and again, you have to say, listen, it's done. It's in the past. We've all done silly things.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
I mean, 7th grade humor is routinely like they pick on somebody and everybody laughs and they're like, I did a good one.
Yeah.
I did a good joke. And then they're like, I'm going to keep saying that one. Boom, boom. And they say it over and over. Less laughs.
Yeah.
But they're picking on somebody else, so you're happy about that. So you've just got to say, okay, you've quizzed out. We're
moving on.
It's time to move on.
Occasionally, I would just say, you've lost your speaking privileges.
Yeah, that's a good.
And they, what? To be able to speak is a privilege. It's a gift from God, and we're temporarily removing that. And so until you're
Until
ready
you get
to
a little
speak
better at
with
that.
grace and season with salt,
That's
it's
good
just
stuff.
Anyway,
Okay, you're number 5.
All right, number 5. I said participate with them, and this is different for me than my number 6, which is include them. That's looking to draw them in, participating with them, even if you physically can't do everything they're doing. Find a way to get involved. Don't just stand on the sideline and look at them doing it. But go be a part of it. To me, these are things as simple as when you're at camp or when you're doing an activity, not being afraid to get the pie in the face.
I had 2 kids join our youth group years ago, and they were from Wisconsin, and they loved hockey.
Right.
I'm a desert kid. I don't know anything about
I grew up
hockey.
in Texas. So
Right,
we don't have
right.
hockey days.
So, but I found myself saying, no, this is where this kid's at. So if I'm going to participate with them, I need to read up about hockey. I need to understand scores of hockey.
When I was a youth pastor in Indiana, our youth group loved to play airsoft. I had never played airsoft before. They said, oh, we'll get you a gun. And I thought, I don't even know if I'd really enjoy this. But I had fun because I was doing it with them.
Right.
And I'm not a huge airsoft buff to this day.
Yeah, and if you're going to participate, though, it doesn't matter if you enjoy it or not.
It doesn't matter.
You better
at all.
jump in.
I'm participating, exactly.
That is good. Okay, my number 4 is review important things. My number 4 is review important things. Honestly, I got to the point where when I look back on my youth group, all my youth group experiences, and I was part of 2 or 3 different groups, and I'm like, what do I remember? I could. I remembered one series that we did, and there wasn't much else. And so when I started, I said, you know what? I'm going to review one thing every day. I mean, every time I speak, every Sunday, every Wednesday, for my whole career. I'm going to repeat this every time. And then there was a message that I was going to repeat once every 3 months. And I wanted to pick things that were important. I think it's the things you say over and over that they're going to remember. And so, and so I don't want it to be some question like, would you be quiet? Did anybody give you a brain? I don't want that to be the thing that I'm saying over and over. For me, the thing that we said over and over is maturity is doing the right thing at the right time with the right attitude. And it's just one sentence that we said at the beginning or at the end of each time. And to this day, teens that were part of that group, if I asked them the definition of maturity, no problem. They remember that.
Yep,
So
that's great. I probably don't even need to review it anymore because I think you did such a good job.
Yeah.
I think that's a great one.
Good.
Here's my number 4. I think junior high especially have a huge hypocrisy detector.
Yes,
In other words,
yes.
they can sense hypocrisy a mile away. Now, I understand they may be giant hypocrites themselves, but they detect it in others. That is especially true with their own parents. And so as a youth leader, encouraging parents that they are aware of the things you're doing and saying, the old do as I say and not as I do thing. When you're in junior high, you're super sensitive to these things, and especially the older kids. And I hear it now from mine who are in junior high coming to me, but Dad, this happened, and this person said this, but they do this. And so helping them, I think, first of all, understanding that it's there. So be consistent yourself. And be honest about things. If you mess up, if you struggle, be honest and deal with it. and then helping them learn how to deal with it themselves.
Yeah.
Not just ignore it and say, well, I just have to walk on tiptoes, eggshells around them, but to help them to try to work through those things when they see other people not being consistent.
Did you look up how to spell hypocrisy? I think you did a good job.
I don't know if I looked. Yeah, I
See,
could
these,
be wrong.
These
I don't know.
tiles don't do that little red
Yeah.
squiggly underneath them. It really is a pain. I think you got it,
I
but
think so.
I would have no idea. I would be like
Yeah. Well, if I spelled it wrong, you can let us know. But
no idea. You know, how do you? I'm putting you on the spot here. What's the difference for you between inconsistency and hypocrisy? Because say a parent is inconsistent, I don't think that puts them immediately into the realm of hypocrisy.
not necessarily, because we all have failings and shortcomings, and so consistency is definitely on a sliding scale, for different people. I think hypocrisy, we might say, is like intent
Yeah.
to do wrong and to say one thing, but then going and doing something else.
Yeah.
It would be like me telling you to not, let's pick something really big, don't drink alcohol, it's bad for you, and then I'm over here on the side partaking.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
I've had to sit down with our group and talk about, because there is a spiritual war, so nobody is consistently perfect. So every, like, Christians now have to learn how to live with another Christian who is a sinner, who's not going to be that way. And yet they're going to really notice this hypocrisy, just going to see it and be really concerned by it, because they're working to be a certain way, but not always that way. I think part of hypocrisy is the lie of saying I'm something
Yes.
that I'm not. And I think one of the things that we would do well is to teach junior hires that I'm making an effort at this, but I'm not perfect. And so I'm not ever saying that I'm perfect, but I'm saying that I'm making an effort at this, kind of living this way.
Well, and sometimes I think they're confused between consistency and hypocrisy.
Correct. I think we have to teach it to them. They run to you're a hypocrite, and you're like, I don't think we're in that league.
And
yet.
I think the reason that it happens is they're getting older and they're becoming more aware of what's going on. And so they're moving from the stage where my dad can beat up your dad to
Right.
now realizing my dad can't beat up everybody's dad.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden these adult ideals that you've had are starting to get a little bit of tarnish to them.
Yep.
And so I think that's why
Yeah.
that comes out.
Everything that looks so good because you were protected
Yeah.
is now you're starting
I
to
can't
see
wait
it.
to be in youth group because it's going to be awesome.
Right.
And then you get there and the kids pick on you.
Right,
You know,
right.
I thought these were the
These were the
grown-up
big
kids.
kids,
Yeah.
right.
So
Yep.
all that stuff.
Number 3 for me is the foundation of love before humor. This one I messed up a couple of times along the way, and the key to me is that foundation of love. I have to communicate to a junior hire that I care about them, that I love them, and I think once I've communicated that, now I can have some humor with them. Now I can joke with them. But if I joke with them before they know my heart, and really they know my heart concerning the relationship that we have together, that joke almost feels personal, or they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to deal with what this adult just said to them that was not very kind or not very nice. They don't get it yet. And so I would find myself that some of the kids that had been in our group for quite a while, I could tease them.
Yeah.
But then some of the new ones, I couldn't treat them quite the same until I got to know them. They knew that I cared about them. And I got to the point where I wouldn't really tease a person until I'd say, man, I just really enjoy being your friend. I enjoy being around you. And once I said that bluntly, then to me, I was ready to tease bluntly. Like that would be okay. They knew the foundation.
Well, and we've already talked about some of these participating, including, and so sometimes I think even as a youth leader, you get tempted or lulled into this false sense of security that I'm just going to get down on their level and tease and goof off, and then you go, wait a minute. They actually look at me like I'm an old guy.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
in my head, I'm
And your
still in
words
junior
matter,
high a
right.
little bit, but in reality, I'm not. And
Yeah.
so it does matter what I say.
Yeah, I think that we have the weight of words. We don't realize the weight of our words, like you were saying. I'm just like them, but really our words carry weight. And so I've got to be really careful with my humor. I still think I want to tease them. I still want to be there.
Teach them how to have
right.
fun.
I just want them to know that I care about them
I agree.
first.
Gotta
So.
come in the right order.
Wow, number 3, we're getting into some big ones.
Yeah, and I
Yep.
think mine is hitting some of the same
Ooh,
ideas.
yes, you-
Sensitive to the motives and actions of others.
Mm-hmm.
So this, again, follows along from my number 4, but there's just a sensitivity to what people say and what people do. I say it this way, often when you're in junior high, you feel like everybody's looking at you and everybody's talking about you. Now, the reality is probably nobody's looking at you and nobody's talking about you, but you just feel like everybody's eyes are on you and everything that's done was premeditated and all of these things, when in reality, they're all feeling that same level of discomfort.
Yeah.
So they're all worried about what everybody else is saying and doing. And really, it's just an internal struggle rather than generally what's happening outside. Now, we understand pecking orders and all that can happen. But I just think there's a sensitivity. So teaching them to learn to work through these struggles and things, learn to walk with God and give their struggles and pain to Him, and then helping them to kind of wade through those tough situations where they just feel like so-and-so's out to get me.
To me, the key word here is the becoming, because relationships, again, to the elementary student really aren't, it's what am I doing, and it's kind of the relationships are just, a friend is not as big a deal. It's still a big deal, but boy, to junior high, suddenly, best friend is probably one of the most important things in life. Now, at the same time, I do a few things where it's obvious I don't care about relationships. You know what I mean? And it's this becoming,
learning how to have it. Become a man, all these things.
Exactly. And so I really think that I have to help a person learn how to do relationships. I mean, we were on the way here, and you were talking about, you had done the dating standards book with your guys, and I mean, we're talking about a 12, 13-year-old young guy, but really he's learning what relationships are all about, and they're becoming important to them, and so they're starting to really listen to it, but not always.
Right, and they're fearful of them too, because I was thinking of those stages when you were talking there. You know, when a child comes into our nursery at church, for example, they just kind of go in, they may throw a fit, or they may just come in and play. Either way, they really don't care what anybody else is doing.
Oblivious to what everybody else thinks.
When they move into junior church, though, as long as there's just a group having good fun, pretty quick, they're joining in and having a good time. But now they've moved to junior high and they start to really notice the other people. And these people are this and these are this. And they try to classify everybody into groups, and all of these things begin to develop. And then they're even moving into high school. Now it's like, well, who's dating who and who likes who, and this relationship is broken and this is over. And so it's just all of these things happening. So these relationships, teaching them how to have good relationships, beginning with the Lord, of course, but then their parents, their siblings, and then the other ones in the youth group.
I just think we have to talk bluntly about it. Basically, to God, relationships and fellowship and interaction, He has created us to be great at it. I mean, we get to fellowship with Him for all of eternity, and therefore He's created us to really enjoy this. But it doesn't mean it's baked into us that we know how.
Well, and like we hear, at least I know you probably have in marriage counseling, a lot of times we use the triangle illustration with God at the top and husband and wife, and as we get closer to God, we get closer to each other. But that's really true in any relationship. And so helping these young people, even in junior high, to say, the closer you walk with God, you've got that relationship, and that one, He's solid, He's never going anywhere. And as others learn to, you'll begin to develop those strong relationships.
That's good. It's good. What do you got for number 2?
Well, this goes kind of to the teaching. When you're teaching, explaining things, you talked about teaching on relationships. So making it clear and personal. So in elementary school, often in Sunday school, we're getting a lot of scripture verses. They may be in Awana or
a lot of knowledge.
Kids for Truth, or a lot of knowledge. And now they're taking that and they're starting to apply it. And if you study education, you know, they have the different types of words that they use for all of those. But making it clear and personal. So I want to help my junior hires be able to apply God's word to where they live in 7th grade and 8th grade. And so it's got to be very clear. Now, this may require stories, illustrations, you know, real life types of things that they can relate to. And this takes a lot of time and prep to put together. You're beyond just I'm going to tell them the Bible story and give them the biblical example of David and Goliath or something else. Now we're taking sometimes even abstract concepts and trying to break it down in a way. But when I say this, I don't mean to keep it, shallow. junior hires, they're thinking, they're ready to go deep on some things. And so don't be afraid to go deep with them. Just make sure they're tracking with you.
Yep.
And it's very clear
Yep.
and personal.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to build right on top of this. My number one is teach anchor truths. Now, here's where I come on this is, being clear, being personal, you're getting down to where they live, that sort of thing. When I'm going to teach anchor truths, I think sometimes it's easy in junior high, like in a good discussion, you can basically blow a junior higher out of the water.
Right.
Like you probably have the mind ability and the critical skills to do that, but you've got to avoid that. Like
Right.
they want the discussion, they want to try to work through things on their own. But I have found that during these junior high years, when so many things are changing, their body is changing, relationships are changing, what was important is changing, their emotions are messing with them, that they need something that they can go back and rely on. What are the 10 things that I know are true? What are the big things? So in a junior high ministry, I think you teach anchor truths. This is the way you get kids through this time where, people will laugh and talk about it. You just have to get them alive through this time. But they are beginning to question everything because everything's changed. And I can't be a junior high leader that basically, everything's changing and I'm going to blow up more. Have you ever thought about this? And you start questioning some things. You've got to go back and say, okay, there are some real anchor truths. So in some ways, it's like some of the material that you would have had in junior church.
Yeah.
But you're making it
Do it all over
personal.
again.
You're
Right.
you're really getting it like, okay, it's like I'm going through this again brand new. So teach the anchor truths. And I'm serious. This is 6 or 8 major things that come out of these 2 years. If I'll just believe these 8 things, that's the foundation for everything else.
I would just add this from a practical standpoint too. One of the things that helped me more than anything else in my teaching and preaching and thinking through this stuff with teenagers is I sat down, and this wasn't right away as a youth pastor, this was after doing it for quite a few years. I sat down and wrote out a 6-year scope and sequence for what I was wanting them to get. And so I set goals for different age levels. And by the time they graduate from high school, I want them to be able to do, and I made a list of things that they knew how to lead somebody to Christ, that they knew how to teach children a Bible lesson, that they knew the basic Bible doctrine, what they believed, why they believed all these things. And then I just worked backwards from there to lay out, and I had, of course, some repetition and things, but going back to those anchor truths, because otherwise we just sort of end up chasing issues putting things together, and now it's, they come out and what did I get? I don't remember anything.
Right. Because they're very quickly about to be adults where they had better have this
They got
foundation and not have a youth leader that's telling them, here's what to believe on this issue. I need anchor truths that get me to that conclusion.
Yep. And it takes more work to plan for this stuff than it does for any youth activity.
Oh, yeah.
Even though sometimes youth pastor, I got to run to Walmart, I got to do this,
yeah.
I got to put all my stuff together for the activity. But this is really where the work
I agree.
has to get done. And if you'll put in the time here, it's totally worth it.
Cool. What do you got for number 1?
Well, this might seem silly. Silliness and shyness. And in some ways, it relates back to your 10, love their future. But I think, for me, the reason I put this as number 1, when they're joining your youth group, you get kind of these 2 extremes. Either the extreme silly or extreme shy, and maybe somewhere in the middle. But that's one of the great things about junior hires. They often live in the extreme.
Yep.
And so taking those things, understanding that where they're at right now, they're going to mature, they're going to change, but also trying to harness some of that energy or even some of that shyness and use it for really positive things.
Yeah.
For example, a really shy young person may be really great one-on-one and just not good in a group.
Yep.
And so looking to pair them up with somebody else that they can encourage and be a friend to and be very kind to. Maybe they make a great helper for one of your other youth leaders in an activity or a project, or even as a teacher's assistant or something like that. And so you can harness that, the silliness and the outgoing, use it But be careful with it, because with both these extremes, it can become easy to make fun of them or, sort of put them down because, this silly one, they're going to do something really crazy in front of everybody, and you're going to have that moment to just zing them, just zing them right through the heart, and you're going to kill it. And don't do that. They'll always volunteer for everything. We did an activity one time where we needed somebody to volunteer, and we were going to do something that, like put a banana in their face or something that they didn't want. And so you got to be careful not to kill either end of this, but just to shape it.
This is so interesting because I used to, in my early days, I would ask youth leaders, so how many good junior hires do you have? Which was a trick question because they would be like, good junior hires. And I usually would get some war story, about one of their junior hires probably being on one of these areas. And I really think that you just have to recognize they're all good people.
Yeah.
Like they all have, like you say, a future and there's something that the silliness and shyness is something I kind of work through, and I got to put up with some of those idiosyncrasies, some of their oddities and things that they do.
But some of this is what makes your 4th, 5th, and 6th graders excited to join the youth group.
Yeah.
Because that's the group they're looking up to. High schoolers are just old people to the 4th, 5th,
over
and 6th
the hill.
graders. And to me, as a youth pastor, not only are you caring for the 6th through 12th maybe, or 9th through 12th, whatever, or 7th through 12th, but you're looking back down in that, junior age, those upper elementary grades, going, this is going to be the next youth group to come. And so pointing this stuff in the right direction is just part of longevity in your youth group and building continuity and growth, on down the way.
Wow, this is a pretty good list, and really several of them complement each other. I've got one little honorable mention. I don't know if you have one or not, but my one little one is, and maybe some guys wouldn't agree with me on this, but I didn't avoid completely, but I definitely did less competition in junior high than any other time in the youth group. I would even come up with ways for a junior higher to not have to play certain games. Like I need a referee, or I need a judge, or I need a helper.
Your timekeeper. I had it there, the maps and somewhere over here.
It really is, because there's so much change of body, or they're so they're kind of like, I don't know. They're just uncomfortable. And so I tried to help them in some of those really uncomfortable times. My wife always had the ability to take a girl out of the game time if she ever wanted to, and the girls knew that they could talk with her, and that was just us kind of being careful. And I do think that competition, when everybody is so different, it puts them at a rough spot. So for me, I'm not saying that I didn't do any competition. We still played physical games that were sports and running around. But the problem is, some of the girls could whip up on every one of the guys, and then they were changing, and they didn't always know how to control all of those changes. So that's just a small one. But
I've got one, and kind of to add on to yours, and then one other. So to add on to yours in the competition, I like to participate. I like to get involved. One of the big things that I didn't learn until I'd been a youth pastor for a few years is I don't have to win every game.
That's a good one.
Because, hey, I like to win. I like to compete. It doesn't matter whether we're playing a board game, throwing water balloons.
Everybody.
Yeah, I just want to win. And now all of a sudden I'm bigger and stronger, and I'm taking all that pent-up aggression from being picked on through all those years.
And you beat every 8th grader in the room.
Yeah. And one of my junior hires, looked at me one time after I just beat him at ping pong again or something, and he said, Pastor Will, you're just good at everything. And I realized, it just kind of hit me, that's probably not the view that I want my teens to have me. I mean, I like it that they admire me and all that stuff, but just beating them at everything is not helping. So I learned not to just lose on purpose or anything like that, but to participate in a different way, to encourage them and help them to win and have those experiences. One other thought I did want to add to was, you talk about, we hit this a lot, the pecking order, the silliness and shyness, the relationships, all these different things. Sometimes you have that one junior hire that no matter what you do, just doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the group. And I had one of those. I think everybody probably does at some point along the way. And so one of the special ways I was able to connect with him, even though at first it was not my favorite thing to do, is he would ride in the passenger seat on long bus and van trips. because he was also the one, if he was sitting in the back, he would annoy everybody. And it would have been easier for me to let him sit in the back and annoy everybody else and have maybe an adult conversation with my wife, or maybe to have another older teenager up front and be able to enjoy it. But instead, I got to sit next to him. And I won't give his name in case you ever watched it. He's now grown, he's an adult and everything else. But
With a good future.
right, one of his favorite things at that point in time in 7th grade was to, everything he said, he tried to say with an Italian accent. So it was his own version of whatever that was. And so, I'm sitting there driving and he's talking on in his fake Italian accent. And I thought, well, I need to participate with them. So I'm driving and I start talking back to him in this Italian, my fake Italian accent. And we went back and forth, but we made a great memory. We connected, and still to this day when I see him, he doesn't call me something in Italian, but he just wants to spend time and wants to talk. And I think sometimes it is just pulling them out of the group where they're just going to be totally obliterated by everybody else, and putting up with it yourself, but then learning to enjoy it and spend time with them.
So, I mean, I would use this video, I would kind of review through this and say, okay, is there something that I need to add to my junior high ministry? Is there something that I could take 3 or 4 of these points and teach my volunteers? Or this might be something that you take some notes from this and talk with parents, because an entire church actually needs to know how to minister to junior hires. So easily they become lost to the whole ministry of the church. And so this is actually something that every parent could listen to. I think it's something that a whole church, and if I were you, I would just take some of the best points that you would say and say, hey, I'm going to share this with our folks, because I believe, and I know your heart on this, I believe that junior high ministry is some of the most rewarding, like we now have adults that are starting to make decisions about the future of their life, and when they make choices here in these years, it has impact on the rest of their life, and it's just a wonderful time to minister. We're not just trying to get them through 24 months of life. We are really trying to have a ministry with them and help them grow, and they can grow immensely in these junior high years.
If you'll keep them here, if you'll get them here, you'll keep them through high school, and you'll see them grow.
Okay.
Good stuff.